by the Gen Zs, and we'll be having a conversation around that on now. What do they want from the government? Why are they going for the demonstrations? And I'll be in studio with my guest shortly just to understand this particular aspect more, even as it's still a headache for President William Ruto, who has now come out to accuse one international organization, the Ford Foundation, of sponsoring this particular protest. We'll interrogate what this means for the nation and the outlook of the nation, as well as, why pick on this particular Ford Foundation group that is yet to respond to these claims by the head of state. And we'll be having a conversation around that, as well as the newspapers' headlines. What is making headlines? I do have the Daily Nation, the Standard, and the Star. So it is a jam-packed session this morning, which you can be part of across our social media platforms. Stream live on EBN TV on all streaming platforms. Our SMS feedback line is 23059. How about to get this show started? My name is Cynthia Nanjala. Now, the main suspect in the murder of 9 people whose bodies were found in Kware area in Mukuru Kwanjenga has confessed to killing 42 people. The suspect, Collins Jumaisi Halisia, age 33, was arrested by detectives from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations in Soweto, Kayole in Nairobi County. According to the DCI Director, Mohammed Amin, the man from Vihiga County committed the murders between 2022 and this year and admitted to killing 42 women, including his wife. Security officers found several items in his rented room, including a mobile phone belonging to one of the victims. The suspect, who lives 500 meters from the Kware dam site, sexually assaulted the women before killing them. Furthermore, investigations are ongoing to find other suspects who collaborated with him in committing these atrocities. The process of identifying other victims continues, along with the post-mortem examinations at the city mortuary.
So further to our media brief yesterday regarding the murder cases reported at Kware, we wish to inform the members of the public that we have made good progress. Today, early this morning at around 1, we arrested the prime suspect named Collins Jumaisi Harucha. Yesterday we did recover one more body, bringing the total to 9 bodies recovered so far. The post-mortem examinations are happening today. We call upon any member of public with information that may aid the police in identifying the bodies or those who have cases of their missing persons to report to the DCI headquarters or the nearest police station.
He was arrested outside a club where he had gone to watch the Europe 2024 football finals. Pursuit and subsequent arrest followed a very thorough forensic analysis of a mobile phone that belonged to one of the victims, namely Josephine Mulongo Owino, where some mobile money transactions were conducted on the very day Josephine went missing. Upon arrest of the suspect, he led our officers to his single-room rental house in Kware, which is located about 100 meters from the crime scene. That is the Kware Dam, where the bodies and the body parts have been recovered. He was married to his first wife in 2022. He started for her business. She squandered the business. He started for her another business. She squandered the business. And out of bitterness, he chopped her into pieces and dumped her at the quarry. But that is subject to further investigations.
Well, that is something that has largely been covered on the Daily Nation this morning, to which we'll be getting to in just a bit, and the headline that they've been able to print out. However, female leaders have broken their silence on the bodies discovered at the dam site in Kware Pipeline area in Nairobi, condemning the confusing and tragic murders led by the Embu County Governor Cecily Mbarire. They have called on the government to prioritize the fight against gender-based violence following the Kware incident and to strengthen the protection of women and girls to prevent the killing of women. Further investigations are still ongoing to unravel the mystery of this crime.
Because now this is turning into a femicide. Wanawake haki zao ziangaliwe ni vipi zinakuwa protected na kila aina ya binadamu, kwa sababu we can never repeat history. Tumemaliza Shakahola, tumekuja katika hii Mkuru. How can it go like this?
So we are going to be asking the National Police Service going forward to revive the gender desks that we had created way back after passing the Sexual Offences Act, and ensure that they work closely with the Ministry of Gender so that these officers are well trained, they get the necessary budgetary support, and we have some form of collecting data that comes every day into police stations so that we are able to have data that is able to let us know where we are on gender-based violence, for example. And we are not saying that we shouldn't, gender is not just about women, by the way. It's also about men. So we are able to also look at crimes from a gender lens and be able to identify where that could be coming from.
Tunaelewa kwamba ikiwa vifo ni takriban watu 42, lazima kuna vyenye mnajua hili jambo venye linatendeka. Tumeona kuna SIM card ambazo zimepatikana. Hakuna SIM card ambayo mtu anachukua bila kujiregister. Wewe unapeanaje SIM card kadhaa kwa mtu mmoja ambaye anatumia kitambulisho kimoja? Kuna simu zinapatikana. Tunajua kuna MMI codes ambazo unaweza kutrace. Kama vitengo vya usalama, tunafanya intelligence work gani?
The government has come in swiftly to start finding the perpetrators, but we want to say that this is not the work of one person. We need from the SIM card information. We need from everything that has been traced to trace the perpetrators, because it is so sad that someone who have killed 42 women was still out there on the streets roaming.
We hope that we can get to the bottom of this problem and really take this opportunity to condole with all those families that have been affected. And stand by the statement, of course, read by Governor Waiguru on the need for emotional support and psychological support and even economic support to the families that have been affected.
At the same time, President William Ruto has continued to claim that there are sponsors of protests against his administration and warned them against the violence witnessed in recent protests, stating that the law will take action against such individuals. Ruto, who was in Nakuru County, called out the Ford Foundation for allegedly sponsoring the ongoing protests in the country. Now, he emphasized that his administration will deal with such parties perpetrating violence and funding protests. Speaking at the development tour, Ruto also criticized the brutal murder of over 40 women whose bodies were found dumped in Kware, Mukuru kwa Njenga. And this comes at a time when youths are planning protests this Tuesday in major cities across the country.
Sisi tunataka tuwaambie wale ambao wanaleta pesa sijui kutoka wapi ati kujaribu kununua fujo, ati vijana wafanye fujo Kenya. Hawa wahuni tutawakomesha. Ama namna gani jameni? Vijana wetu wa Kenya, tafadhali msikubali ati watu wafanye nchi yetu iwe ni nchi ya kupigana, ya kuharibu mali na ya fujo. Tutaweka amani sisi wote. Wangapi wanasema tuweke amani katika taifa letu la Kenya? Hiyo ni sauti ya Nakuru. Nakuru wamesema hatutaki fujo, hatutaki vita, hatutaki kuharibu mali ya taifa letu la Kenya. Tunataka kuweka amani katika taifa letu la Kenya, ndio kila Mkenya apate nafasi ya kufanya kazi, ya kuhustle na ya kujitegemea. Munasema we want peace. Munasema you want peace. Hebu kila mtu tuseme we want peace. Kila mtu. Kila mtu. Kila mtu. Na wale wahalifu wote, hata wale wameleta hasara mpaka watoto wetu wasichana kule Kware wamepoteza maisha yao kwa sababu ya wakora na kwa sababu ya watu criminals. I want to tell the country those behind the criminal activity against our children, against our daughters in Kware, all of them, the government of Kenya will make sure that they are brought to book and they are charged so that we can stop criminality in the Republic of Kenya and protect our children, our daughters, and all citizens of the Republic of Kenya.
Now to the newspapers, we'll kick it off with the Daily Nation this morning that asks, is this man the serial killer of Kware? The man is Collins Jomaiso Halisia, age 33, who according to police has confessed to killing 42 women and dumping their bodies at Kware dump site. But while detectives have found their main suspect, his alleged neighbors both in the city and the village say they do not know him. So women leaders have demanded probe targeting the police officers, even as Collins Jomaiso Halisia has been the man to be pinned down, with police officers who addressed the press on Monday, that is led by the DCI director, as well as the acting inspector general of police, and they gave more details into what this particular this particular murder, what are some of the details in it, including the name of this particular suspect, released his faces, as well as some of the I'd say things found in his possession or belonging found in his possession. Now sleuths say the man confessed to killing 42 women, including his wife. Including his wife, but Kware locals say they have never seen him before. And so the details have also emerged of just how police were able to corner this particular man, Collins, even as they say, they nabbed him on Sunday night as the Euro 2024 finals were being played. That included Spain versus England, and they say they nabbed him at about 3 a.m. in the company of other people, and they were able to interrogate him to the point where they were able to release the details that they released. There also has been warning from the police over misinformation. Particularly, they've flagged some of the accounts on the X platform on social media over what they say is misinformation and giving wrong details, which has led to impersonation of a particular other young man who has been at the center of attention as well. Now, the DCI director, Mohammed Amin, said the suspect, who he termed a psychopathic serial killer with no respect for human life, led sleuths to the dump site after confessing to the killings. Now, several paraphernalia believed to have been used by Jomaiso was also found in his house and were displayed to the media at the DCI headquarters. Now, although the police say they had cracked one of the country's most shocking murder cases, locals in Kware questioned the entire operation, claiming it was a ruse hatched to cover up the truth. And that is why there's that big question on, is this man whose face is on top of the page the real killer, putting into play accounts and what locals within Kware are saying, as well as neighbors of this particular man, both in the city slum and in the village. And so that is the latest that comes from the police, even as the post-mortem results are not yet out, just to be able to identify what exactly or how exactly did these people die, what are some of the injuries that they do have, are the injuries consistent amongst all of them, as well as just the identity, because there has just been bodies but no names to these particular individuals who have been unfortunate victims of this crime. So that is the headline on the Daily Nation. Now, Nation also speaks of foreigners funding protests, says Ruto. Kenya is a democratic country governed by the rule of law and run by democratically elected leaders, and we all want peace. We cannot run our country through anarchy or revolution. We will ensure that whoever is sponsoring this particular protest is met with full force of the law. These are not my words, but words by President William Ruto, who yesterday, perhaps for the first time, has been able to finger who is funding the protest in his own words, at which he says it is foreigners, and he was able to specifically single out an American-based Ford Foundation, and he said that those behind the chaos will face the full force of the law. He further condemned those he claimed were influencing the youth to cause violence and mayhem. And this is one of the questions that has really been out there on, is this just a people-led initiative where, you know, people are seeing what is happening in the country and are now coming out to speak about it, or is someone behind this particular protest? Well, we'll be having that conversation in just a bit, but also, just so you know, the state has increased the road maintenance levy by 7 shillings from 18 to 25. And this has caused an uproar as it implements that 7 shillings fuel levy. Now, the decision by the state to increase the road maintenance levy by 39%, that is 25 shillings per litre of diesel and petrol, has caused public uproar amid concerns of further financial strains on households and businesses. EPRA made a surprise inclusion of the levy in the petroleum pricing cycle for July 15th to August 14th. The tax is collected at the fuel pump and was previously set at 18 shillings per litre, with 3 shillings allocated to an annuity fund and the balance to road maintenance, rehabilitation and development. Now, I was actually looking at what EPRA had been able to print out as the fuel prices governing this month. And what we're looking at is a situation where we've got about 10 different taxes on this particular, you know, landing cost of fuel. The landing cost of fuel is different from what you buy at the pump. There's a landing cost of fuel that is of a different amount. And then you've got the 10 taxes which are added to the landing cost of fuel. And then now what you have is the price of fuel that is being, you know, announced by EPRA. And so that is really where the biggest brand is at. Now, to the Standard newspaper that speaks of running out of excuses. Who to blame? Well, it started with blaming the opposition. Then it went to the former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now it is non-governmental organizations that are being accused of funding the Gen Z protests. However, the government seems to be groping in the dark on how to address the governance issues it faces. And that is where the big you know, branch lies as well in terms of just the Kenya Kwanza administration and where we are now as a country. Because one, you've got protests that have been called by the Gen Zs today. The Gen Z have called for demos today, and governors are not spared as well. Two, you've got a dialogue where talks failed to start yesterday. It was supposed to be a 6-day talk. Then three, you've got an unrest where it started in schools, but to grow to national headache. And so, you know, the president says, we know them, they are sponsoring violence against our democratic nation. So who now does he dialogue with to calm the people when the youths themselves say they do not want dialogue, they just want action? And so from blaming opposition to NGOs, the president is running out of excuses, and that is according to the Standard newspaper. Ruto says the Ford Foundation has no business intruding in the affairs of the country. However, the Ford Foundation is yet to respond. So we'll be having a deeper conversation around this particular headline on the Standard and what now this means for the country and our democracy as well. And the questions on, you know, can it not happen that people can just wake up and say they're demonstrating because of some of the policies that have been in place in government, as well as corrupt leaders, opulence in government, but rather that somebody has to be behind this particular protest. Also, how do you now spot the difference between a funded protest and one that is not funded? And so we'll be having that conversation in just a bit. However, dialogues fails to start as leaders are divided on whether to dialogue or not. Also, top of the page on the Standard, why DCI say it's a serial killer. The police paraded a 33-year-old man they claimed is behind the horrific killings, but Kenyans are raising questions on the arrest. Also, why The Standard have also been able to do the story on the fuel, even as it says, newly raised road levy likely to start protests. Well, it's a question on, do we now see this as well on the streets today, where the demonstrators will be able to finger the government over the rising road maintenance levy from 18 shillings to 25 shillings. So those are your newspaper headlines. All right, do stay with us. We take a quick breather, but when we come back, we'll be getting into that conversation. I'll be joined in studio by Nick Mwadime Mwangi, who's the MKUSA National Executive Director. And so stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Keep your feedback coming in across our social media platforms. We'll be able to sample them when we get back. Stay with us. Gen Zs, or at least those who are also Gen Zs at heart, who have decided they will be joining this protest. And we'd love to interrogate and understand, despite the head of state putting up austerity measures, actually withdrawing the finance bill, then putting up austerity measures, then dissolving his cabinet, it is still not enough, because the Gen Zs have said they will be going to the streets yet again, and there's more things that they're demanding for. And so we'll try to understand this, as well as this new claim by President William Ruto that there's an American-based institution, the Ford Foundation, that could be at the center of funding these protests. How so? Yet the youths themselves, or the demonstrators themselves, say that, they're not funded by anyone. This is a people-led revolution. The dialogue that was set to kick off on Monday failed to kick off. Contributing factors included there was no venue. Yes, there was no venue. And also the fact that who exactly would the president be dialoguing with. So we'd love to understand this and much more around the state of affairs in the country. I'm not alone in studio. I'm joined by Nick Mwadime Mwangi, who is the MKUSA National Executive Director and the Youth Chair of the Jubilee Party. Thank you very much, Mwadime, for coming into studio this morning.
Thank you so much, Cynthia.
Yes, good to have you.
The concerning issues, probably, it's a good question that you're asking today.
Yeah.
Why are we still going back to the street?
Yeah, why? Because the head of state has done quite a lot of things that people didn't expect him to do, including the dissolution of the cabinet. So why are the youths back on the street again?
Cynthia, I think Kenyans should know that we're not just concerned about Finance Bill 2024. This whole regime started way back in 2022.
Yeah.
This is a president who went on a campaign trail promising Kenyans heaven. We are today, as a country, in a lot of dilemma, because Finance Bill 2023 came. There was no single audit on how the Finance Bill helped Kenyans. And it's even more aggravating because where I'm coming from, that is Mount Kenya College's Student and Association Organization, that is MKUSA. We're still counting the number of dropouts in the campuses levels. We are still talking about the ridiculous education funding model. So let me tell you, Cynthia, or let me ask you, Cynthia, why will the Gen Z not get aggravated? There are no jobs. We have very much learned Gen Zs on the street. There is no schools for our brothers and sisters coming to the universities. And the president keeps on delivering promises and promises over and over again. And it is sad that yesterday I saw him because I understand the president is also a politician on top of his vehicle again, claiming that the Gen Zs have been funded. You remember a few weeks ago, on 25th of June, he came out and called the Gen Zs criminals. He's on record. He has not sent an official apology or withdrawn his statement. He's still purporting to say that we are criminals, we are being funded, and we need to go out of the street. Yet, there's no conclusive feedback or any kind of information that he needs to give the Gen Z. Because the issue of cabinet, reshuffle of cabinet, has not yet solved anything, because we are very much cognizant that he was running everything on State House. All the ministries have been running on State House. So how do you say that the problem was the cabinet, yet you have a whole regime headed by the president? It is just customary in other countries. Such regime should resign and go home.
From what I'm picking from you, Mwadime, is that despite the president having withdrawn the finance bill, because week one of the protest was reject the finance bill.
Yes.
The head of state did that, rejected it. However, we also consider the fact that the demonstrations went to a level that Kenya has never been to before, because they were able to occupy parliament, for lack of a better word. Later on, he also put up austerity measures, cut the budgets for some of these offices, including the office of the First Lady, the spouses of the Deputy and the spouse of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Said he will reduce the advisors, government advisors, by 50%.
Yes.
Later on, he was able to dissolve cabinet, despite the fact that perhaps a lot of expectation was some will just be reshuffled, others will go home, others will stay. But he said, you know, let's do away with the whole cabinet. What more should he have done to be able to quell the anger of the Gen Zs?
You know, we the Gen Zs are saying quite clearly, there's nothing more you can do. In your regime, you are the head of the state, right? And you have seen the regime fail. You cannot put more bandages on an aching wound, Cynthia. 2022, while he was on a campaign trail, he had promised so much on Mama Mboga, vijana wa boda boda. Vijana wa boda boda and Mama Mboga today are complaining because their businesses have failed. Their children are not going to school. Their houses are being demolished. They are still hungry. This economy has not stabilized, Cynthia. So it is simple. Gen Zs are saying, we have had enough. With your regime, we respectfully saying, please resign.
But Mwadime, do you understand the ramifications of a head of state resigning from office? Because this is a constitutionally elected president into office.
Yes.
There are Kenyans, about 7.1 million of them, who put this president into office. And so when you call for the resignation of a president, do you understand what the effects of that? Because that means it's a whole process that kicks off yet again. And there's a whole budget that is needed, putting in mind that we also do not have commissioners in place yet. But it's a whole process that is going to start again that could also take another years for us, or for Kenya, to be able to, to settle, for lack of a better word.
I'll give you a very good example.
Yeah.
The former Prime Minister of England, Boris, when he laid out the restriction, let's say law mandate of COVID-19 in England, it was very unfortunate that he himself found himself in a very tricky situation where he went
not following the protocol.
And he went for a party. But what did England or United Kingdom demand? His resignation. Because you as a leader, you cannot purport to leading a nation, yet there's a lot of fake promises, there's a lot of ingenuity, there's a lot of concern. Because he told us from the word go, he will be putting a lot of mandate on tax and doing less borrowing. But we have seen the issue of edible oil, right? We're still not accounting for that. We have seen the issue of NHIF crumbling down. There's still no account for that. We have seen abductions in this country. There's still no accountability of that. Today, as we speak, 45 women are found in Kware.
42?
42, rather. 42 women are found in Kware. There are a lot of speculation that some of these women could have been killed due to the shootings that were happening in Githurai 45. He's still on record saying that Kennedy was not first shot in Rongai. He was first shot in Buruburu. He's still on record. So this is a president who has no absolutely accountability on his part. And that's why you are getting Kenyans getting more and more and more agitated. And let me tell you, Cynthia, based on how Kenyans voted in 2022, most Kenyans don't vote with logic. They vote with emotions. And if we were to go back to the election, I'm telling you, Kenyans were ready to go back to the election.
Now, for the head of state to come out publicly and say there's an American-based institution, Ford Foundation, that is funding this particular protest, despite the youths themselves coming out to defend and say, it's just people and it's just organic. Actually, they call themselves leaderless, partyless, but they say they're not rudderless. And so for the head of state to come out and say that, this may indicate that he's got information either from the National Intelligence Service or from Homeland Security that there are indications that there could be people that are funding this protest. So what does it now mean? Because for a head of state to come out and say that he doesn't just get it out of nowhere. It has to come from somewhere. But yet we've got the other group, the youths themselves, who are saying it's organic. So it puts us in what kind of situation exactly?
I'm really, really terrified by his statement, because when the Gen Zs went on the street, he first accused the Azimio, saying that the Azimio are funding the protest, that the Azimio people are still not recovered from losing an election. We then saw the government spokesman, Dr. Isaac Mwaura, saying that there are calls from Russia funding the Gen Zs.
Yeah.
Yesterday, we saw the president alluding a lot of allegations to the Ford Foundation. And let me shock you, Cynthia. His recent trip, his recent trip to the US, he had a meeting with the founders of the Ford. Is he trying to tell us that meeting was not fruitful? Is he trying to tell us that the meeting that he had with the Ford brothers did not bear any fruits? What exactly is he trying to tell Kenyans? And it is very, very sad, because an official government body led by the government spokesperson giving allegations of information, should we get worried about his intelligence? Or is it a matter of causing allegations and trying to split and divide the movement started by Gen Z? So Gen Z are very cognizant of the fact that this revolution from the word go has really, really been organic. Why are we saying so? We are still demanding for jobs. We are still demanding for NHIF. It's still failing. Our parents are dying, our sisters are dying, our brothers are dying in the hospitals. The students in campuses, the help is not working anymore. A course that I did, an engineering course that I paid 28,000 in a year, currently it is at 390,000 in a semester, or in a month.
Academic year?
No, not even an academic year.
Month.
In a month. So, let me ask you, Cynthia, why will the Gen Zs get funded with all this happening on the table?
Right. Now let's talk about solutions, because it has been admitted that this particular youth or group has, gone through school. We've got professionals in this group. We've got experts, analysts just within this particular group age. On the issue of employment, from where you sit, Mwadime, how should the government be solving this issue of unemployment? How should they be doing that in such a way that perhaps if the government decides to take that step, then they'll be able to quell the protests that have been called by the agencies?
It is simple, Cynthia. We invest, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs invests a lot of time and resources taking our young people outside the borders.
Yeah.
Yet again, we can still build our infrastructures. I know today, our government, for example, in the field that I come from, engineering, we are still doing a lot of infrastructures. But where are we finding engineers there? We are still lacking doctors in our hospital, Cynthia. We are still lacking nurses, Cynthia. We are still lacking teachers. Are you telling me that there are no schools that need teachers this morning, Cynthia? So I think it's just a laxity of the government. I think it's just a way, a tool that they want to create come 2027, because I'm not very sure that the government really wants a solution at this stage, because this is a problem this government has created on its own. They still want to sustain it. They still want to use the same problem for their campaign to come 2027. How long are we going to live in this cycle? That's what the Gen Zs are saying. How long are we going to go for school? Some of them have gone for 7 years in a course like medicine. Engineers are going for 5 years. Other professions are going for 4 years. We are saying simply, let us not play these games anymore. Because in as much as we want to play coy and try put a lot of problem in our countries, this government itself has a lot of mandate to ensure that unemployment rate shoots down from 85%. 85%. By the time President Uhuru Kenyatta, my party boss, was leaving this country, it had reduced to 60%. Right now, it has shot very high to 85%. As we speak today, because when this government came into office, they were saying they found empty coffers, Cynthia. But we have seen opulence of cabinet secretary. There's a lot of arrogance that had been right from the head of state, Cynthia. And it is sad that, as they say, because I recently had my colleagues say, the president is promising a lot of fake promises. He's promising a lot of nothing, in short. He said that there are 5,000 jobs, digital hub in Ruiru. Have you been to Ruiru? The young people are still not going for their jobs. Cynthia.
All right. So, Madam, allow us to take a quick breather. But when we come back, I will just get to understand on this national dialogue that the head of state has called, why there seems to be no formula, and if the youth want to be listened to, what other way can they do that if not dialogue or any other way that may be there? So we return shortly with that conversation. Stay with us.
You are
all right, welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Now, we're still with Nick Mwadime Mwangi right here in studio, who's the Youth Chair, Jubilee Party, as well as the MKUSA National Executive Director. Now, Mwadime, you've been able to pinpoint some of the issues that are leading the Gen Zs to the streets. Unemployment, which you said, there should be investments in some of the ministries really to just employ these particular youths. Now, on the university funding model, because schools, right now the higher education is becoming unaffordable, which is the plain truth, because of just the amount that a child or a parent will have to cough to be able to take their children through that particular 4-year course. Should they disband the new university funding model and get back to the initial model where, government pays part of your school fees, you pay part of the other? Should they disband the new university funding model?
Cynthia, before we went on a break, you were asking me about solutions. I really don't understand why the government had to move from the old kind of model.
Universities were struggling, according to the Ministry of Education. They were struggling in debt, and they're not able to sustain themselves. Most of these universities have got debt.
Really? We have seen a lot of scandal in the universities. We've seen a lot of looting in the universities. So it's not an issue about the funding model per se, rather, Cynthia, rather than how do you make a working system? Because look at it this way, Cynthia.
Yes.
So many students are not coming from, for lack of a better word, a good family system where they can afford an expensive kind of education. Literally, let me give you a good example. not so many students can afford to go to USIU. But we can afford, during the old model, we could afford to go to Kenyatta University, Technical University, Jaramogi University, Nairobi University. But be as it may, USIU is very unaffordable, Nairobi University is still unaffordable. So what are we telling our young people? These are clever people who passed. Are we not in a danger of increasing the social crime in our society or in our country? Are we not in a danger of increasing drug and substance abuse? Are we not in a danger of increasing early pregnancies? So, at what cost are we willing to pay, Cynthia, in the name of changing this education model fund? That is what Gen Zs are saying. And it is very clear. We are moving from NHIF to
SHIF.
I don't know, it's SHIF.
Yeah.
Right? A friend of mine, he just called me over the weekend and told me, right now, Nick, I'm in a dilemma. I don't know whether to pay for the NHIF or not, but my mother needs these medical services. Just a week back, we saw the system, in quote, for the NHIF, it hanged. So can you imagine how many millions were lost in that process? Hospitals right now are declining NHIF, are declining this process. So what I'm saying here, Cynthia, today, this government, I don't know who really advises the president or who has been advising the president, because systems that have been working properly just needed a little bit of making them better. But right now, we have moved from working better to our situation.
Yeah.
And, this is what is aggravating, Cynthia. You cannot miss food. Again, you cannot miss a medical recover. That is what is aggravating the young people. And that's why they are really, really, really angry going back to the street. And this is the danger that we are as a country. I know you saw the clips of the armed men who are the snipers who are shooting down the young men who are occupying parliament. Allegedly.
Yeah.
But we have bodies, rather, because we cannot allege something that has happened. And I want you to imagine these young men or young women were ready for anything. How dangerous is that kind of mindset? That we are living as a generation that we are tired of having an oppressive situation. Now we are at a point, death is not a scare. So, Cynthia, that is a very dangerous state whereby a human being lives in a situation whereby I have nothing to lose. This is what the Gen Zs are saying. We need to fix our country.
Right. Now, which now brings me to members of parliament. Because this is a house that has got three main roles: to oversight, to legislate, and to represent. Those are the three main functions of this particular house. And because they're the legislators, they're able to put up policies and laws in the country which essentially are supposed to be favorable not just to the government but also to the people of Kenya. Now, we saw the housing levy battle court case to which, it was largely over how members of parliament voted. They voted yes, despite people saying they didn't want the levy. Now, the SHIF, which recently the courts also declared unconstitutional, took it back to members of parliament and told them to just put proper legislations. The finance bill, they voted yes, despite people saying no, which led to, the effects that we saw on that particular day. And so these members of parliament seem to be working in a cocoon where they do not really understand that they've got also a role of representing, and that when people say no, it's a no, and people say yes, it's a yes. And this is also where the biggest problem lies at. And we've seen calls for the president to dissolve parliament. From where you sit, has the parliament been captured by the executive to an extent that they would rather do what political parties want rather than what the people of the republic want?
Cynthia, a little bit of a political class, politics 101. Parliament is made up of the majority and the minority.
Yes.
And currently, as we speak, the majority have the leeway in parliament. And President William Ruto is a party leader of United Democratic Alliance. So he managed to team up with different political parties such as ANC for Kenya to form a majority in parliament. And you know, bills in parliament, after they're debated, they go through the process of voting.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in as much as we want to entirely blame the parliament, it is also our own responsibility as Kenyans to vote in the right MPs. Because the MPs who are currently there have been compromised. They're in for the bag. We recently had allegations of 2 million shillings. I don't know how true or factual that is, Cynthia. But as the minority side that is comprised of Jubilee, Wiper, ODM struggle to protect the interest of Kenyans, the majority take the sweep. So it is a very complex issue. And I want to agree with Kenyans that it is high time. I'm also recalling my member of parliament, Mwafrika Kamande, in Roysambu, because he's among the many MPs that are putting Kenyans into pain. Because how do you pass a very punitive bill like we had in 2024? We still don't have an audit of Finance Bill 2023, Cynthia. So how do we now, in a new financial year, that the government is proposing that we need to have a new financial bill, and with a lot of blackmail, in as much as the president has withdrawn the finance bill, he's still blackmailing Kenyans that, okay, now that we don't have the finance bill, prepare for loans. What do we mean? We have been surviving this country with loans. It's just that he's been purporting that Kenya is not taking loans. If, as we stand today, the first world countries like US, China are still in debt, what about Kenya? What we are just saying as Kenyans, we need accountability of one, our taxes. Two, where the money allegedly that we borrow as a country is going. That is what Kenyans are saying. Regardless of what our parliament is doing, I want to agree totally that it is high time as Kenyans we vote in the right member of parliament, Cynthia, because I cannot imagine that we go back, call our parliamentarians, then have them back. But I know the president will not dissolve the parliament because this is a trap for him in a political way, because he knows that if we go back at the ballot, he will not come back.
Right. And so does that mean, is there a likelihood that our nature of politics in the country will change? As you said, voters also bear the huge brunt of who they elect into office. With the sort of civic education we've seen done by the youths who are doing X spaces, who are on TikTok, doing live, doing videos, and they've been able to educate people on some of the fundamental tenets within the Constitution. Are we likely to see a change of our political trajectory come 2027 to the essence that people will not just vote a particular party because it's quite popular in a region, but they will vote a leader who they know is of integrity and will be able to listen to them once they get into office?
Cynthia, one thing that we, the young people, have to be cognizant that we somehow failed this country, because as most young people, or few young people, came out in 2022 to vote, most of them were still in bed. A majority of them were still in bed. However, this has been a turning point to us. But what really actually worries me the more is, in this Twitter space, I see a population of 168,000 Kenyans, Cynthia.
Listening.
And listening. So what worries me is we're in a country of 50 million Kenyans. So what we need to ask ourselves, the simple maths is, arithmetic is 168 over 50 million gives you around 0.034%.
Yeah.
Right? We are yet at 1%. So it means the conversation has not taken its route to Tana River, to Siaya, to Taveta, to Kwale, for people to understand what we actually need to change in this country.
So does that mean moving away from social media and going physically on the ground?
Exactly. Because the conversation cannot remain any longer on social media. Because statistically, there are very few young men and women who still have smartphone.
Yeah.
If in Roysambo, where I come from, a majority are still using the Katululu, Cynthia, and a minority are on space, right? Then we need to bridge the two worlds, so that they also understand that this is our country. This is our nation. At the same time, because in as much as we are the majority in the country, the youth space, we also need to think, how do we bridge the gap of the old guards and the young guards? Because to the patriots we are in this country, Cynthia, because as history says, the more things change, the more they remain the same. So how do we make sure in the next 20 years, when we are the old guards, we're not repeating the same process? Cynthia.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you've mentioned that, because let's talk about sustainability. 20 years is a long time.
Yeah.
But how about within 2 years or 3 years in the run-up to 2027 elections? If at all these protests continue, and if at all the youths continue with voicing out and calling for change and calling for accountability, as you've said, within public offices, how do they sustain that particular kind of voice and momentum to the run-up to 2027 elections? Because it's one thing to speak about it now and do things now, but come 2027, we're still back at square one as a country. So how can they now sustain this particular effort all the way to 2027? Because that will be a huge litmus test for this particular group. They say the youths control the largest share of registered or at least voters in the country. I won't talk about registered yet, but at least voters within the country. How do they sustain it in such a way that they will be able to implement this change just through that voting pattern?
Well, Cynthia, we have to be cognizant of the fact that how did this government first got into place in 2022? Because again, I said it here, it is a majority of the young people who puts this government here. We are moving from a conversation of tribe to a conversation of issues. So it's a discussion of issue base, right? And in slightly before 2003, when Kenya was at standstill of getting tired of the Moi era or regime, over 5 years consecutively, it was the anger and the passion of changing that regime that kept Kenyans going. However, at least at that point of time, we saw what is actually happening today, that Kenyans coming together saying enough is enough. Let us agree on one thing, Cynthia, that Kenyans should, again, do not agree to be divided. Because in the principality of ruling, it's usually saying the more you divide people, the more you conquer them. And I'm sometimes a little bit afraid when I see some of our young people getting greedy and being called aside for few cash. We are forgetting the basic of why we went on the street. why are we actually fighting for ourselves? Why are we actually fighting? Because we are the parents, or we are the parents of tomorrow. Why are we today?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Why are we actually having this conversation in the first place? So we need to shift from now, as I said, some sort of a plan, structure. We started at this online, right? How do we bridge in everyone who's not online, right? How do you now discuss about voter registration when IBC brings such issues? I also understand, because again, it is also very difficult in as much as we are saying we are partyless.
Yeah.
Cynthia, there's a clause, I think it's section 3 of the IBC rule that says you need to have, if you're willing to run for independent, as an independent candidate, you need to have a quota of signatures of the registered voters. That is, assumingly, in Roysambu, where I come from, we have 50,000 registered voters. A quarter of it brings it to around 12,500, rather. Right? So, are the Gen Zs really willing to look for those signatures manually? So those are the kind of conversation we need to have, Cynthia.
Yeah.
So, not that we are saying it's bad to be partless, but as much as we are willing to be partless, are we willing to pay the price? Are we willing to take the conversation to the next level? Or is it just a conversation, we are doing it online?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you've said that, because this conversation, as you've said, the Gen Zs are, maybe listening and they're thinking, yeah, we need to take it to the next level. Because what we've seen for the last couple of, I'd say 3 weeks or so, is online to the streets, back online to the streets. And so this next level, do people really understand, Bodime, from your circles, do they understand that that is what involves the next level, if at all they're to get to that level?
And that's the question that I'm begging to ask my young people today, Cynthia, because let me say the thrill of going to the street and back online, how long can we sustain it? Because in my view, I think President William Ruto is counting on the thrill to go down, so that we forget actually what we're even talking about.
Like this is a passing storm.
This is a passing cloud. And we cannot allow it. Because if this is a passing cloud, it means come 2027, we have the same leaders, the same problems, the same issues. It will beat purpose, Cynthia, if 2028 we are back on the street discussing another finance bill 2028.
Yeah.
It will beat logic, it will beat purpose. So I'm urging Kenyans who are in my generation, let us understand. And if they're willing, because we can move the narrative of partyless up to a certain point. We need to understand what are the clauses of IEBC. How can we sustain ourselves as partyless? If need be, should we visit an institution like the Office of Political Party Registrar so that we get more informed?
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Those are the questions that we need to ask ourselves as young people. Yes, Cynthia.
That's interesting, and that's a food for thought for sure. Now, let's talk about dialogue. President William Ruto announced last week that there will be a multi-sectoral forum that will involve 50 youths coming onto the table to dialogue so that they can voice these issues and then come to an understanding with the government. And it was supposed to kick yesterday, which was Monday, all the way to Friday, but we didn't see it kick off. Now, as you answer this, why didn't kick off? But also, this dialogue seems to bring in a lot of scars from people because of just past dialogues and the outcomes of the dialogues and whether or not the dialogues actually served the purpose of why they were up in the first place. Could that be a contributing factor to why the youths do not want to dialogue? And if at all you want your issues to be heard, how then would you alternatively want the government to hear these issues?
First of all, Cynthia, we as Mount Kenya colleges, universities and colleges, Student Association, we are on record because we were invited for that space of dialogue. We are on record saying that we wish not to participate.
Why?
Because Cynthia, what is the accountability of Denzel, who was abducted and killed? Who's being accounted for Kennedy, who died in Rongai? What happened to the protesters who are being killed? Or as we speak, currently the abductions that are still ongoing. So why are we having a dialogue when these processes are still ongoing? Again, Cynthia, what is there to talk when we know that the government in its let me say, bottom-up plan, they had issues that they needed to do in this country. They said, the president is on record, mimi muniachie mambo ya uchumi. But we see the economy is still crumbling. So what are we exactly talking about? Why not just do what you promised Kenyans to do? It's as simple as that. What are we talking about? The education funding model. That Kenyans cannot afford an education funding model, Cynthia. Are we talking about that it needs to go high, it needs to go lower? That is just logic. That the education needs, Kenyans need to go to school. Are we talking about the CBC that parents are still struggling with it? Cynthia, Mount Kenya Colleges Student Association is on record, I repeat, that this dialogue is just another ploy, another game to take us circle and circle so that we forget our issues, so that we are divided.
So there will be no way that you as the Universities and Colleges Students Association or the other Gen Zs will sit down and speak with the government. It is not anywhere in the future.
It is not possible. It is not possible because, you know, Cynthia, I want to give a marriage kind of situation. Kenya, we went into a marriage with President William Ruto. And so far, how we are feeling...
You want to divorce?
Exactly. We are feeling that we want a divorce because it's been an abusive kind of situation. Kenyans are being abducted. Kenyans are being killed. Kenyans are still dying of hunger. Our parents are still homeless. Our brothers or our colleagues are still not going to universities. Why are we having dialogue? That's what we Gen Zs are saying. Yeah.
All right. So is protests a way now for the government to be able to see from afar and listen from afar on what the youth want? Is protest the only way?
Well, you have to understand, these were peaceful protests until the ordering of and shootings of Kenyans. Gen Zs came out peacefully to implement Article 37 of the Kenyan Constitution. And they were saying, we know our rights. We are demanding what our taxes are being used for. We want quality education. We want quality medical care. We want job opportunities. We don't want fake promises. And I know that narrative of saying, is protest the only way? But how did we get first in the protest? Why did we have to do protest if the government of the day just had to implement what they promised? That's the question also we are asking. Why did they have to force our hand into crying out our voices, Cynthia? It means that ingenuinely, this government had no plan. They had no interest in implementing their agenda right from the start. They were clueless. And that is why, you know, sometimes I sit down and remember my party leader, President Uhuru Kenyatta. He cautioned Kenyans. He told them that tusisikize maneno mdomo tamu, because we will pay the price. And I agree. Currently, we are paying the price. And as we are feeling the pinch, that's why we are going outside, saying enough is enough.
Right.
Yeah.
So as the youths go back to the streets today, what will they be calling for or demanding from the government to do? We also are aware of the quarry killings and just the number of bodies that have been picked up from there so far. And I've seen on at least a section of them saying, you know, that's the reason why they're going to the streets again. Aside from that, what also would they be demanding for today?
Cynthia, I think I was watching news today when you were early reporting that either it's the IG or the DCI rather, saying we have Collins who confessed, and it's only 8 bodies that have been recovered. So, and you know, again, that is sad, Cynthia, because as we know, it is 42. Can we give proper accounting? Why are we trying to aggregate or aggravate Kenyans? Because 42 minus 8 is simple maths, 38. What is happening in those 38? Why are we not recording the correct facts? And to me, Cynthia, we cannot go back to those areas of kidnappings and killings and dropping bodies. There's a reason why we fought for independence in 1963. There's a reason why we went through in 1990 a section repealing of a constitution, section 2A of the Kenyan constitution. That's why we had parties. There's a reason why we have a Kenyan 2010 constitution, that it's supposed to protect what? Kenyans. What are we trying to show Kenyans when we simply violate this constitution? Because it is totally insensitive, Cynthia, because what we, the young people, are saying, we still cannot we still don't want to believe that it's Collins who did it. Because we know that we know who did it. We did not see any accountability happening in Githurai, yet there were shootings that were happening at night. As I said earlier, there are a lot of allegations that the mothers and women who are in the market at that day were shot. And it's on record. The president said nobody was killed. But we are having, recently with Sabasaba.
Those are huge claims you're making.
And that's why I'm saying allegations. He said he's on record saying there are no bodies. But the numbers of bodies we saw on 7th of July, Uhuru Park on a Sunday. Did you see parents there, Cynthia? If you are alluding that people did not die. Did we Kenyans count from body 1 to body X?
It is the government that is alluding that people did not die.
You understand, Cynthia? And that is what is aggravating Kenyans. If things are factual and we can see our mothers crying on live camera, you saw the mother of Kennedy, you saw the parent of mother of Rex, you saw the mother of Denzel, you saw Jake what recently coming out. Are we trying to say that we are totally insane, Cynthia? That we actually cannot comprehend statistics? We cannot differentiate between staying alive and staying dead? Those are the questions we're asking the government. Because this is what is giving Kenyans a lot of emotions, a lot of anger. Because, Cynthia, I cannot be having a conversation here today with you as a young person. Then tomorrow, I don't see Cynthia. Are we safe even in our own country? That's what Kenyans are saying.
Right. So we've got about 1 minute to wrap it up. So I'd love to get the final word from you. After today ends, what next now? Final word in just a few seconds.
Well, in a few seconds, Cynthia.
Yes, please.
Wakenya msilale, lale lale, Wakenya msilale, bado mapambano, pambano, bado mapambano. Thank you so much, Cynthia.
Thank you very much, Mwadime. You ran the risk of turning this into a protest area, but asante sana for coming in this morning. That is Nick Mwadime Mwangi who's the youth chair of Jubilee Party, as well as the MKUSA National Executive Director, that is Mount Kenya Colleges and University Students Association. Asante sana for coming and making time this morning. Well, we would love to wrap it up at that point, but of course today the Gen Zs have yet again called for demonstrations, protests in major cities across the country, and we'll be keeping tabs with that as well, just to understand, you know, what happens today, putting in mind that we've got a military on the streets as well, following that gazette by the former Defense CS Aden Duale, who gave a go-ahead for the KDF to be deployed to the streets. So we'll be keeping tabs to see whether or not they will be on the streets, how do they now coordinate with the police, as well as the peaceful protests that have been called. Are we likely to see a scenario of the last protest where, you know, looters were able to infiltrate those particular protests? So we've got so much to keep tabs on. However, coming up at the top of the hour is Your Faith Today with Reverend Felix Kavoy. Keep it EBN TV. Don't go anywhere.